Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and today, man, I love it when I'm able to have guests, particularly those who have rings and things. Joshua Perry, NBC Sports analyst, but before he was able to make his way into the media world, 2014 national champ with the Ohio State Buckeyes, fourth-round pick with the Chargers, spent some time in the league doing his thing, and now he can let us know all things college football. Joshua, what is going on?
Man, excited to do this. You know, it's funny when the college football season ends, it almost feels like the guys who I covered for all those years were kind of handing them off to the NFL dudes, and you guys take pretty good care of them. But really excited to look at some of these prospects and talk about where their fit is.
You know, here's what's funny about that, right? Having done the thing, I kind of feel the same way in terms of like having been a college scout for a long time and watching those guys grow, being a football junkie, a college football junkie in particular. Like, I love seeing the jump and the progression because, as you know, having played in both games, the game is different. And some of the guys that shine on Saturdays may not necessarily be right fits on Sundays, but then there's some underrated guys that on Saturdays, for whatever reason, it doesn't pop. And then you watch them in the Sunday game and they look completely different.
It's crazy to see. And it really is a progression, right? And I feel like you know this because you've been in every part of the NFL. Fit matters, timing matters, all those things matter. But the guys who have the resolve once they get into, right? Like the biggest part about that game is the mental game to me. You know, there's a lot of work that's done in the NFL, no doubt. But it's having the right mentality, being able to approach it, being able to learn and fit into different systems. And that's where I think guys can gain an edge.
You know, it's funny you talk about gaining the edge. I've always felt like this. I've said this not only as a player, but as a scout. Like, there are 53 guys on the roster, but if we took numbers 35 to 65, we could swap them and mix them up because all those guys are just as worthy of being on the team. The thing that helps now, the practice squad has expanded and given more guys opportunities to kind of be around. But yeah, I believe like we can talk about the talent, and there are a handful of transcendent guys on every team, but the majority of guys have to be in the right system to have success, which brings me to the guy that I'm telling you, man, when I evaluate Fernando Mendoza, I feel like I have this tug of war with my brain saying, man, he dominated at Indiana. I'm looking at Kirk Cignetti and this team run roughshod over everybody, but there's still something where I'm like, man, in 10 of the 15 games that they played before the national championship game, he had 19 or fewer passes.
Yep.
He didn't have, I would call a signature game where he had 400 yards against somebody. But he managed the game effectively the entire time. And so I'm stuck between, is he a game manager or is he a game changer? When you look at him, what feelings do you get?
It's funny because I feel like people haven't really approached that conversation with Fernando Mendoza because he's the best quarterback in this draft, right? Like that's where it starts and ends for him. But some of what I'm grappling with feels a little bit like the conversation I was having in my head when it came to JJ McCarthy. And I think Fernando Mendoza is a better quarterback than J.J. McCarthy, but it's this idea of a heavy run-affected offense. It's this idea of not having a ton of attempts, you know, only a couple of 300-yard games. Like, it's hard to project what that looks like going into the NFL. The things that he does well, we all know it, right? Like, he's got a really good arm. We've seen him make the passes from the far hash out to the sideline. He's done that numerous times. He's pinpoint accurate. He's a guy who's a great processor. I also watched a lot of free access passes. Also watched a lot of the ball coming out of his hands quickly. Watched a lot of this run game really affecting how they could throw the football. Not a lot of opportunities where he's throwing a drag over the middle of the field and he's got to hit that window right before it closes. When he sees that interior pressure, his feet start to get a little bit happy, his eyes start to go down on the rush. And I'm conflicted because I do think that he has a lot of the skills and the traits. It also comes down to this idea of fit that we just talked about. If he's in an offense where they are a heavy run offense, where they do a lot of play action, and we just saw what Clint Kubiak was doing with Seattle, right? He had K9 back there. The Raiders, they've got Ashton Genty, right? Like it feels like that's going to kind of be the approach. I think that he can be a successful, thriving quarterback in that kind of system. If we're talking about straight drop back all the time, that's where I get to the questions about Fernando.
You know, it's funny. It's one of those things before the Raiders selected their head coach, there's kind of this thing with Fernando that you're trying to figure out like, hey man, fit matters. Fit is everything. I compared him to Jared Goff when Jared Goff was coming out of Cal and how it took Jared Goff a minute to get his feet up under him. But when Sean McVay comes in, Ty Gurley behind him, they had all those wideouts on the outside, good offensive line. Hey, he was systematic. He played point guard. They had a lot of success. To me, Mendoza falls into that camp. And when I hear you talk about Indiana and the run-heavy game and those things, people feel like you're hating when you're like, hey, man, I never saw him have to put the team on his back. He had moments, but he didn't have a game where he had the least talented team and had to lead them over the top.
Well, let's talk about the moments too, because Penn State was the drive that everybody talked about for a while. And there's a different way to look at that. He took a sack early in that drive, right? Like cardinal sin of quarterbacking on a 2-minute drive is to take a sack. Then you look at the sideline throw he had to Charlie Becker. That was more a hell of a catch than it was a hell of a throw. And then even when they got down into the low red zone, the pressure was on him. He couldn't get it. Finally throws that ball to Cooper, which, again, that's the only place that you could throw it. On that back line, you got to try to throw it toward the goalpost. But I don't know how many wide receivers are getting the foot down, and that ends up being a touchdown too, right? So, like, even when I'm looking at these moments, and he certainly did come up clutch. And the one thing that I'll give him, he took some hits this year and got right back up. And oftentimes after big hits or after interceptions had some of his best performances, some of his best throws. But even like that moment that everybody was hanging on about halfway through the year, like there were some flaws even to that drive that ended up being kind of the signature thing that people talked about. So I'm with you. It feels like when you approach it, everybody's like, oh man, you're just hating on the guy. And it's like, I'm really not. The idea is we're evaluating a quarterback who could be the first overall pick. And we have to see if the value really matches that and what type of system he needs to be in to be successful.
Well, and the way that I would think about it from an NFL standpoint, we always talk about in a shootout, Fernando Mendoza versus Pat Mahomes versus Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow. Who goes to the shootout with the bigger gun? All those other guys that we talk about. Now, we can strap them up and put them with all kinds of ammunition and get them going, but from a talent perspective, when we think about the number one overall, he's not transcendent. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't work and he can be systematic, but if we stack them all up, he's different than what we normally have seen. And in a year where, look, he's the only one. And FanDuel Sportsbook has him as minus 7,000 to be the number one overall pick, and I can go with that. But there's no other quarterback. So we just have to be careful of making him more than what he is, because the standard should always be, hey, man, a transcendent guy has to be at that number one overall pick.
I'm with you. And the guys that you just mentioned, right, like they can all do the off-platform thing, right? Like some of them are at their best when there's chaos and they have to move out of the pocket. And Fernando Mendoza, like that's, if you talk about all the tools that he has throwing the ball, it's probably the biggest thing that you say he doesn't have in his bag. And as we know in this game, the way the NFL is right now, like you got to have some of that to your game. You got to be able to get creative. And I'm just not sure how creative he can end up being.
So the final part about Mendoza that I think is funny, and it's a bit of a debate that I've had with some people. You would certainly appreciate this, having been in an NFL locker room. I do wonder a little bit about the persona, the personality,
let's talk about it,
and how that jives. Because the one thing about the quarterback is he has to connect with every corner of the locker room. And if this person who we see in front of the microphone, if that's his authentic self, everyone can deal with that. But it is kind of funny, like when I see him, like, man, like what's that going to be like with 30 and 35-year-old dudes who are hanging on him to kind of be the guy or whatever, when his personality, I won't say is nerdy, goofy, however you want to say it, it's a little different than your atypical alpha dog that mans that position.
It really is. And frankly, like I think guys will come in, especially if he's a type of person in terms of the work that he's willing to put in, that he was when he came into Indiana. I think that's how he captured that locker room. And as you know, like that's square number one. You get a dude who wants to come in, he wants to be a part of the team. Like you'll figure out how to connect with guys. The part of his personality where I think things are of intrigue is he feels media trained. And I don't say that to necessarily be a negative thing, but as you know, when you get into those meetings at the combine, there will be one coach asking you a question, another coach sitting in the back will ask you a question too, just to try to get inside your head, right? When you get up on the board, there'll be a guy telling you to draw this up, and there'll be another guy telling you, we'll do this for the defense, all at the same time. I'm curious for a guy who has been so good at being prepared, right? Like
Yeah.
train for those types of things. There's not really a great way to get prepared for those meetings. I know they do the simulated deals when these guys go off to train, but at that point, it's just like, who are you and what are your instincts and how are you going to handle that? And I'm curious what he's like in one of those situations. Guess what? We'll probably never get to see. We might hear some stories, but I think that's going to be the biggest test in terms of the personality part.
Yeah, the personality part is going to be challenging in terms of trying to assess how that's going to fit. Luckily, it's a different time than when you and I were coming out. Now they have all these extra meetings that they can conduct on Zoom where they can get a better feel for him. But I would say the situation is set up for him to succeed because Clint Kubiak can put him in an offense that's going to protect him. They're going to run the football, run to edges. He's going to bootleg. He's going to come out the back door, all the heavy play action stuff or whatever. The only time they get dicey and hairy, like it does for most of those quarterbacks that can play in this system, if they're not like supremely talented, is how do they have to play when it's a drop back game and everyone knows, and you have to throw this thing 30 times and the pass rushers widen out. They get in their track stances and they know, that play action stuff we're ignoring.
They get those linebackers mugged up in the A gaps, and it's like, all right, here we go. All right, it's off to the races. That is the question. That's the biggest thing that it comes down to for me. There's a question about the lack of attempts, but there's also this idea of if it becomes drop back passing, if that offensive line can't take a step and they're running the ball similarly to what they did this past year, how do you handle those situations?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch him develop. Now, I know this because the Big Ten championship game, and I know once we jump in the media, we're supposed to like be neutral or whatever, but I know like the Buckeyes were there and it was right there for them. They stroked Mendoza early, and that defense that Ohio State tried it out. I'm not going to say it's the best version that we've seen from them, but there are a lot of blue chip players. And I got to go to your old position, the linebacker position, because there's a guy that everyone talks about, Arvell Reese, but then his sidekick, Sonny Styles, is also a dude. When you watch them guys, and we put on the scarlet, like what is it like to watch those guys play around and run around and make plays?
I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and there's a legacy there, obviously, and I'm fortunate that people say my name sometimes when they talk about that linebacker legacy. But you go back to the Spielmans and the Rick Middletons and Randy Gradishar, like all the way back there, and then you get to the AJ Hawks and the James Laurinaitis of the world, like just a lot of great players, and these guys they're it right now. There's a stat that's crazy. And obviously with what's going on with Darren Lee right now, like even more crazy, but he was the last Ohio State linebacker that was taken in the first round of the NFL draft. So it's been a little while since there's been a linebacker who's been like a super blue chip guy. Raekwon McMillan was a great player. Jerome Baker, right? Pete Warner, like all those guys were really good players, but to have Arvell Reese being talked about as potentially the best player in this draft, and then Sonny Styles, Mr. Consistent, Mr. Make a play when you need a play. It's been really fun for me to be on the other side now watching this linebacker legacy.
It's funny, and one of the things that is not discussed, but I think will benefit them going into the league, they played for a former NFL head coach and defensive coordinator. And that defense that Ohio State was playing this year was a little different than the other years. The blitzer formation, the check with me's, the constant changing. Just talk about how advantageous that could be for those guys playing under Matt Patricia and what he brings.
Yeah, it was one of the questions that I had about an NFL coordinator coming in to be the boss of Ohio State's defense. Like, how much can you teach guys when they got to go to class and nowadays when they got to do appearances to try to earn that NIL that they're getting? And he did a phenomenal job of teaching, as you mentioned, but like, the thing that stood out to me was the amount of versatility, the different looks that these guys had. Like they would come out in drives and they would have, 3 down odd, and then they would come out in just a regular 4-man front. And then you would see them have 5 guys at the line of scrimmage. What they did with the blitz packages was amazing. You would see both Sonny and Arvell walk up on the line of scrimmage. We'll get to Caleb Downs in a little bit, but he was a 3-level player on that defense. They did it with different personnel. They put 3 linebackers out there. Sometimes they would have 5 or 6 DBs out there at times too. And the idea that these guys had the opportunity to learn what it's like to be in a multiple defense and what it's like, to your point, to have all those checks and to really be game plan specific. When I played at Ohio State, we played cover 4 70% of the time. We would roll out there and we knew the call was over cover 4. And we get in our blitz packages, we had our mug packages, and we ran some hot blitzes. We had 2 under 3 deep. That was really it. There wasn't very much else going on. These guys on a game by game basis had different game plan defenses, and that's what you do in the NFL. So from a preparation standpoint, they'll come in feeling like they're ahead of the curve compared to the other rookies.
You know, Arvell Reese is interesting because I feel like people are chasing the unicorn of Michael Parsons. And I think they have, because people missed in a way on Michael Parsons, everyone is looking for the off-ball linebacker that also is a dynamic edge rusher. And while Arvell Reese certainly flashes those things, I don't know if he's in that category. When you see Arvell Reese, what do you think he's best at?
If it was up to me, this dude is an alien, a freak of nature, unlike anything I've seen. I've watched him go on a blitz, have to retrace from the far hash and make a tackle down the line for like a 3-yard gain on the sideline, right? So like I've never quite seen anything like that. I've also watched the same dude run over a 300-pound offensive lineman just off of pure power. So to me, I would like to see him play on the edge. Part of the reason why I say that is when you're playing on the edge, like your world is this big. When you're playing off-ball linebacker, your world is this big. And Arvell Reese, for as talented as he is still a very raw player to me. I think he's raw when it comes to his pass drops. I think it's raw when he comes to his run fits at times. And I don't think that you could walk in and say that he's going to be a hybrid. We're going to have him do both. That's going to be too much on his plate. So if I had to pick one or the other, I'm putting him on the line of scrimmage. I'm taking stuff off of this plate. And I'm saying, go ahead and hunt quarterbacks, right? We need you to be a great run defender. You cannot be a liability for us. So you got to sit great edges when we're doing our stunts and when we're getting into our games. You got to be where you need to be. But ultimately, what you're going to get paid for and what everybody's trying to get paid for is hitting quarterbacks. And I think he can do that at a high level if that's his given position.
You know, it's interesting because one of the things that I wrote down in my notes is his athleticism makes up for the step late that you see in terms of the instincts and the diagnostic skills. And in college, you can do that. But in the pros, everything happens faster, more physical, whatever. And if you're not great with your eyes, it can impact where your feet and all that other stuff happens.
No doubt. No doubt. And I think that's my biggest concern when it comes to him. I think he's not an immature person, but immature in his evolution of the game of football. I still think that he has a lot of football to learn. And having played linebacker in the NFL, you got to be the guy doing the checks. And when the formation, when they shift and when they do all the breaks, like you got to know exactly where you need to be. How are the DBs rotating in front of you? What's the D line doing? What are their stunts? What are their games? It's a lot to put on a guy's plate when he's not, when he's still in kind of 101 in terms of football.
You know, one guy who's not that, you mentioned him, Caleb Downs. Man, Caleb Downs being a guy who I love to talk about those guys being the traffic cop, being able to take all the information, get everybody on the same page and do it. And it certainly seemed like Matt Patricia put a lot on his plate this season.
He definitely did. I think there was a trust immediately with those guys. It was funny because the running joke around Ohio State is that Caleb Downs really interviewed Matt Patricia, right? Like it had to be something where those guys could really connect. I had the opportunity at Big Ten Media Days to sit down with Caleb Downs, and I was asking him questions. One of the ones that popped up was, what's the difference between playing in the Big Ten and the SEC as an Alabama transfer? And most of the guys would do the whole, the stadiums and the environments and the players and all that kind of stuff. And he gave me the most academic response that you could hear. He was literally like, well, we run a little bit more 12 and 13 personnel up here. Formations are a little bit more wide open down there. Like it was a legitimate football rundown. That's who this guy is. He's a football guy. He's just in the film room all the time. And the thing that I mentioned earlier that stands out to me is he's great at playing safety, right? Like just really good at the one job. They asked him to do multiple jobs and he was successful at all of them. And that's his ability in game to process and to never miss anything. And I think it's really impressive that he's that dialed in mentally.
Yeah, no, I think that is a terrific asset to put on your defense, to have someone who is the cerebral playmaker, the guy who has the versatility, the guy who can erase some of the mistakes of others. Because as we know, when you're on defense, you have a bunch of different intellects, a bunch of different guys that have various strengths and weaknesses. To have someone who can kind of get everyone lined up and to make up for some of their mistakes, man, that's an invaluable skill to have.
It really is. And we saw that, right? Like he's the eraser in the middle of the field when play would spill out and he had to make a tackle. He was a sure tackler in that regard. You could see him physically lining guys up. You can see him pointing to different things in the pre-snap. Like those things all show up on tape. The one thing that I would say bothered me, because this is me putting my fan hat on with Caleb, is there were opportunities for him to take the football away through the air, and he was going in to knock dudes out. And I think the next step in his game is stepping in front of that football instead of trying to take somebody's helmet off.
Now look at you. Now that is what I call an evolved take from someone who has transitioned from being the rough and rugged linebacker to being able to have like the bird's eye view, the perspective of, hey, turnovers matter or whatever. That is true because turnovers will get you paid. However, I still appreciate having the enforce in the middle of the field every now and then to make people pay taxes for catching people in between the hashes.
So let's talk about this. One of the biggest things that has bothered me about the game of football today, dudes wouldn't throw over the middle of the field in the past. That was a surefire way to get a dude knocked out, to get cussed out like that. That was never a thing.
Yeah.
And nowadays, nobody's scared. They throw it over the middle of the field all the time. So I do think there is something to being a guy who's like, screw it. If you want to throw it back here while I'm standing right here, I'm going to make you pay for it. But let's get the ball back for the offense, go get some more points.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the thing in the league, and the thing really at every level, it's about turning the ball over. And how can you turn it over? Give the offense more opportunities. The numbers tell you when you turn the ball over, your odds of winning go up. And so for Caleb, who, look, football is a family business, that's the one thing that he's going to have to dig in as he goes through not only the pre-draft process, but as he gets ready for his rookie year and those other seasons. Can he take the ball away? Because when you look at his stat line, he doesn't have that volume of what we call splash plays that normally would accompany someone who's a top 10 pick.
No doubt. It's like it's the one thing, and it feels like nitpicking in a lot of ways because his game is so complete. But that's what the NFL is, though. Like that's how guys separate and become all pros from just really good players.
Yeah, speaking of good player, how about wide receiver now? You guys have churned out a ton of wide receivers. Brian Hartline, before he departed, had done a really good job of taking that position to the next level. Carnell Tate is now the next in line. We've seen all these other guys, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and JSN, shine. Carnell Tate really came on like game busters this year, but he's playing opposite Jeremiah Smith, so he's not really the number one. As we project out to the league, is he a 1 or is he a 2 at the next level?
I think he can be a 1. I think he comes in as a 2, if that makes sense. There's a lot great to his game. He's got the speed. He's got the agility. He can win versus man. He's really good in zones. He's got great awareness of where the sticks are. It's one of the things that I've started to look at when I'm looking at wide receivers is like, are you making sure that the offense can stay on schedule? Don't run your route just short of the sticks, and then we're over here having to make a decision on the sideline. He's been really good with that. On the fade ball, late hands, I know that's kind of been a catchy thing, but he's done a great job of running the fade ball generally, contested catch, but also the late hands makes it difficult for the receiver to know when to, or the DB to know when to try to break up the pass. So he's got some refinement to his game. I think the attention of a number 1 early on in his career maybe isn't going to give him the best start. So that's where I'd be. The other thing I would say about him is he continues to develop as a player. Physicality, I think, has to evolve in his game. That's run blocking. That's also just in terms of route running. Like I think that at times you can push him off of his landmarks. So ultimately, one of the top playmakers. Like it comes down to a couple things for me with wide receivers. Like all the skills, that's fine. Do you catch the ball consistently, and do you keep the offense on schedule? And I think he does both of those things to an elite rate, and he scores the football as well.
Yeah, and I would say this, having looked at maybe some of the challenges for his former teammate Marvin Harrison Jr., I think fit and scheme is everything. I think you have to, when you take him, you have to understand. We talk about apples to oranges in terms of the comparison between a number 1 and a number 2.
Yep.
My suggestion to a team thinking about taking him is don't project him out to be a number 1. Take him as a number 2 and make sure he plays that role early, because if you take him and put him in a different role, he may not be ready for that jump, because that jump is different when you go from being the guy who is the complement to being the main entree on the plate.
No doubt. I mean, it's one of these things that we talked about it at the very top of this deal, right? Like there are so many factors of coming into the NFL that can dictate success. And one of those is when you have somebody who people should be excited about, like Carnell Tate. If you put too much on him early on, like that's kind of on you more than it is on him, because that's just not what he's going to be day one. Now, if we're talking 3 years from now, yeah, hopefully that's the role that he can play. But day one as a rookie, like make sure that you want to feature him, but he can't be the main feature day one.
Yeah, but look, I think he's going to have an opportunity to have plenty of balls thrown his way.
Oh, yeah.
He is going to be a top 10 pick. Depending on where he goes, you hope that he goes to his place with a quarterback. But look, he's talented and he's the next. But I already know, talking to my scouting buddies, that other dude that's hanging there, Jeremiah Smith, whoo, they're salivating, wait for him to come out.
Have not seen a player quite like it. I met Jeremiah last year, his freshman year, and I'm going in to do a feature with him and Emeka Ibuka. And I met Emeka before, so I dap him up. I go to shake Jeremiah's hand. I'm a former linebacker. I don't have small hands. This dude's hand just like enveloped mine.
Yeah.
I'm looking at him, broad shoulders. You know, he's got big quads, right? Got a high ass, right? Like all the things that you're looking at when you're evaluating dudes. And it almost looked like you're looking at a linebacker at times. This dude is out here routing people up.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch, and he has it, and you can tell that he has big hands by the way that he catches. Mm-hmm. There's guys that when you're looking at pass catches, you can just tell because everything hits their mitts, and if you're in the stadium, you don't hear the ball. To me, he strikes me as that type of guy.
Oh, no doubt. I can't wait to see this last year, like hoping for his health, hoping for everything. Like he could do anything he wants to do in college, and I just can't wait to see what he looks like when he gets to the league.
You know what I can't wait to see every year? I can't wait to see that big game every year at the end of the calendar when you guys play that team up north. And I'm gonna make sure I don't cite them because I know Buckeyes get mad. Y'all X out all the M's.
Oh yeah.
But when I look at the team up north, one, you finally rectified, you righted the wrong this year. But I'm looking at them and I happen to be studying tape. And Derrick Moore, the edge defender for Michigan, has really come on like game busters. Finished this year with 10 sacks, steady progression or whatever. But we were talking before we logged on, and he did something at the Senior Bowl that kind of caught your goat a little bit. What did Derrick Moore do? Like, what is it besides the uniform? Like, what could you hate him for?
All right, so you know how practices are structured, right? So you come out some days and you're just in uppers, right? You got the shorts on, you got the shoulder pads. To me, that is a signal of what the tempo for the day is. We're going fast, but we're trying to protect your body in a way. Then you get to the one-on-one pass rush drill. It's a drill to me that's set up for the defense to have a little bit more success for the offense. You know, there's not really a quarterback on there. You're rushing to a mark. You can't get, all the help, the different things, right? I watched this man in uppers go out and this is like, show me your best stuff time at the Senior Bowl. And he bull rushes and elite power, right? Like knock dude off of his feet, which I give a lot of credit for. But is that what your pass rush tree is rooted in? And it makes you start to go back and look at the tape. Are you a bull rush guy? What is your pass rush tree? If that's what you're going to be in the NFL, I'm just not sure that you can win like that all the time. I think he's a guy who defends the run very well. Obviously, he's got that power to be able to knock a grown man off of his feet. But as I'm looking at rushers, one of the things that stands out to me is who has started to develop a pass rush tree. I think rushing the passer is really a game of chess. It's a thinking man's game, and people don't see it like that. But you have opportunities early on in the game to set up what you're getting ready to do. If you're a speed guy, you hit them with speed first, then you start to build your counters off of that. Can you get to a speed to counter? Can you widen somebody out and then get to an inside rush? All those things matter. If I know that your go-to is a bull rush, I'm just getting ready to anchor down and I'm going to block you all game long. And so I'm trying to figure out if he's got a little bit more to his game than that.
It's so funny because I'm looking at my notes here and what I have down. One, he's 6'3", 260. That's what he's listed at. Power player, long strider. I have him as a bull rush specialist because when we look at the tape, that is all that he
That's
comes
what he
off
does.
With. He's a technician. He's good with his hands. He's consistent. And the thing that I will give him credit for is he's improved steadily each year from 2 sacks to 5. He had 40 and he finished with 10. That said, it's hard for power players to be dominant players in the league when it comes to sack production.
Yes.
If he's going to be a power player, he's going to have to be an A-level player against the run,
100%.
and he's going to be a cleanup man as a pass rusher, meaning that he's playing opposite a dominant guy. That dominant guy flushes the quarterback his side, and he wins on effort and relentlessness when it comes to that. Power players, because man, in the league, man, that's cool when you're doing it on all these little guys. But when you're sitting against the all-pros and they're in that stance, they're looking for that, and they're going to blow you back. So it will be interesting to see how his game translates to the pros.
No doubt. And again, like with a lot of young pass rushers, you see it where, if a guy is an elite speed rusher, right? Like he'll beat dudes in college all day long with speed. But then you start to wonder, okay, is there a counter off of that? Then you start to wonder, how is his handwork? Because he really doesn't have to use it. He can get away with just dipping around the corner. And then once again, with these power guys, like I love what he does against the run, by the way. Like this is not me trying to say that he's a bad player, but when you're looking at the upside of what he can be as a rusher, I know these tackles are like, that's the guy. I want to block him because he's not going to make me work that hard.
He's coming right at me. I'm going to sit and anchor. I'm going to short set him. I'm going to do some things to throw him off, but I know he can't run around me, so I can kind of put my cleats in the ground a little firmer. Last thing before you go, we talked about this running back, Emmett Johnson, coming out of Nebraska. Like he has kind of been the buzz of late. You talked about him. You've seen Nebraska a ton. You guys covered him. What excites you about him potentially going to the league?
Well, I mean, it is the juice, right? Like his legs look like they've got more pop than most of the guys toting the rock in college. And Nebraska's offense to me was very flawed this last year. I didn't think their offensive line was great. And I think Dylan Raiola put them in some really bad spots with the way that he likes to play football. But the one thing that you could count on was Emmett Johnson being able to make plays. And you watch him run it inside. He's one of those guys where he'll stretch you wide, he can cut, and then he'll make you miss once he gets to the second level, and he's got the speed to hit the home run ball. He can catch the football very well out of the backfield. And it feels like in today's game where you want to make sure that, of course, you can dominate the line of scrimmage and you can get those tough yards. Like he can get you some of those inside, but the guys who hit home runs to me are the ones that I fear the most. I like the dudes where it's like, okay, if he's an inside runner, I just got to pack my lunch. I'll put my face on his face and then we'll go to work. Like the idea of stretch you, make a cut, can make you miss in a phone booth, can get up on your secondary. He's got those types of skills. And from covering him in college, he was like the bright spot on that offense. It's a ton of fun to watch.
Look, you talk about a ton of fun to watch. And when we project out to the National Football League, you always want a running back who's had to carry the load. Maybe not so many carries, but I want to see, hey man, what is he like when he's had to play against +1 boxes, when everyone in the stadium knows he's getting the rock and he still churns out 100-yard games. To me, that's impressive. And when you add what he can do out the backfield, today's running back has to be a factor in the passing game. Emmett Johnson has that.
He does. I mean, it's one of those underrated, probably, like, obviously the guys from my alma mater get a lot of the buzz because it's Ohio State and everybody's watching on a week-to-week basis. I don't know how many of the general fans watched Nebraska football this year, but if you watched him, you saw him, right? Like he was immediately one of those dudes. When you flip on the tape, it's like, oh my God, who is this guy? That was when I first got into my breakdowns. That was my initial reaction. Is who is this guy and why don't we talk about him more? Yeah,
no, he is so good. Like you are so good on TV, man. I could do this forever. Thanks so much for coming on the Bucky Brooks show. I'm going to have to bring you back later because this was fun. I love talking ball. We're going to have to do it again, Josh. Thanks so much.
No, it was a lot of fun. I'll be at the Combine as well, so hopefully I bump into you.
Oh, no, we're going to make sure you bump into. We're going to make sure we bring you on, see what we can do, see if we can chat.
Right. Appreciate you.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on.